Welcome to Geekatplay Studio. In this tutorial, we're going to easily and quickly create a unique small city with a large scale, and we'll be using image mapping for our distribution, so you'll learn this as well. And we'll be looking at our materials creation and environment development also. And we'll begin by using our photo editing, like Photoshop, or you can use GIMP or Painter. Anyone will work for this one. We'll go to File, New, and we'll create a new image at 1024 by 1024. And what we're going to do right now is create some city blocks in a street. So we have our marquee tool, and we'll select this area. And then while holding down the Shift button, select more areas. The Shift button makes it so you don't select a new area, but you're adding on to what you already have. And what we're doing here is just creating these streets right here. Okay, so that's very simple. And we'll create a new layer now, reset to black, and let's edit and fill. And here are the streets. Now let's create a new layer, and we're going to select Modify and go to Expand, and let's expand it by 15 pixels. And now we'll go select Inverse and let's edit fill that. These dark squares are where our buildings are going to be populated. So if we take away the streets, you can see that. But let's make a city park in the middle here. So we'll just quickly select that block and delete it, and our city park will go right there. And now if we go back, let's select this area like this. Let's create a new layer, and this is where our park will reside. So we'll create another image map for this park. So while we're in here, we'll just create some trees. And we'll just go along this border here. Make some shrubby kind of looking landscape shadows going here. Trees along the borders, and in the middle is where people will take a stroll in the sun. And I think this is all that we need to do in Photoshop, so we'll save this image. And we'll title it as maybe trees. And then we'll save our other one as park. And this one, we're saving that as buildings. And one thing, when you create these maps, you can make them as detailed as you want. We're going very fast for the purpose of this tutorial, but you could, for instance, make little alleyways in here, or small side streets. So if you want, you can actually go into these buildings and cut in here. And like that. You can make these small streets or entrances, so you can get really as involved as you want. And we're done with this now, so let's go into View. And inside View, we need to create our terrain. And there it is. And let's make it bigger. One thing I want to point out, in the forums people ask, okay, you're telling us in the tutorials that this is 10 meters by 10 meters, but what if I want to preset it to feet or inches? And it's actually very easy to do. You go into File, and you go to Options, and in Options you go to Display Options, and then right here at the bottom you have Length Unit. So you go down and just select what you want. So you can go down here and you can have Imperial, which would change this to feet and inches, or you can have all these different units right here, even the virtual units. And Inside here, you can also go to General Preferences and go to Grid Resolution. And this allows you how many clicks. So mine is set at a default of 10. So if I press Shift, it will click 10 times before it locks itself. And you can make it more or less, whatever you like. And mine is here using the default units, meters. So we'll just make this a much bigger terrain now. And let's open up this terrain to edit it, and we'll go to reset it because we need it flat. And this is totally flat. So if we put in new materials, we're going to get nothing because it's 0 height. So we'll go to Pictures, Load Pictures, and when we load it, we'll do our streets. And let's set this maybe to 2%. And that looks good here. But the problem is that our streets are still at the 0 plane. So we'll go here, load again our streets, but this time we're going to invert it and set it to 1%. So it just slightly gives us some height there. So now here the edges are sharp, so we want to increase it to 1024 by 1024 by multiplying right here. So this gives us a nicer look. Let's go to our camera and move it a little up and look down. And let's see what we have. And while we're here, let's save our work at this step as well. And I'll just save it as street. So now here is our basic terrain. And let's work on it some here. And we'll go to edit our materials, double time click, and as a basic it has this color, so let's set our basic color to maybe something darker, some kind of a gray cement kind of a color. And let's add a layer, and we'll just select the basic default as well, and this is just our streets, how they are laid out. And what we'll do is go to Transparency and Global Transparency, remove this node, add an image, and as an image we'll go and add our streets. So let's go right here and move this boost to maximum, and you can see that it looks kind of funny, and that's because we need to set it to Object Parametric. And you can see that now they're applying correctly in the middle. So now let's go to Color, Edit, and you know what, let's create, this will be our darker one, and let's make this a true asphalt look. So we'll go to Edit function with the colors here, delete these two nodes, and we'll add a simple noise node, and let's decrease it all the way down now. So now we have this kind of mixed asphalt look. And where our buildings are, let's create around here. So we're going to add a new layer. And if you want, you can actually make it a little bit darker. Look, so go here, edit color, and make it darker. Transparency, delete this node. You'll be so familiar with this when we're done, you'll be able to do it with your eyes closed. So we'll go to here and we'll bring in the buildings. Click OK. OK again. So if we preview, you can see again that we need to make it object parametric. And here they're looking kind of laid out, looking kind of nice. So this is our area where the buildings will come in, and the sidewalls actually came up pretty good. So let's now create our ecosystem. But before that, we need to make the buildings we'll populate it with, and that's easy. We'll just create a cube, make it taller, a little bit bigger, and this is just going to be our default building. File, Save Object, and we'll just save it as cube for now. Okay, let's go delete this object, go back to our terrain, and once the ecosystem is selected, add an object. and we'll bring in that cube that we just made. And one thing, if we populate it this time, you can see that it goes all over the place. So we need to control how this happens. So we'll go into density and variable density, right click edit function, and we'll add an image at this point, and we'll add the buildings. Now, if we populate them in by default, what happens is that they go on the white portion of this image. So then we just need to go back into the editor and inverse this. So they come where the white is, and that's where I want the buildings. Let's go now and select avoid overlapping. You could leave that, and that would give us an interesting effect if you wanted. But let's now go to our scaling and disable the rotation. So now if we're populating, we can see how our buildings are coming up very nicely, more evenly where they would come. So let's leave this for now. And let's work on the next thing, on our blank spot right here. That is going to be our park with the grass and trees. Right there in that area. So let's go to add another layer. This layer, we'll just double click on the color and select maybe the fields map, right click edit. Okay, remove the node. I'm just trying to create an additional map so the park grass will look a little more real. So now we'll go into transparency and remove this node. Let's add an image, and as the image, we'll select our park. And let's make sure after that to select that as object parametric. And you can see in this mini preview image, it is already applying very nicely here. Next, we need to create some trees for our park. So we'll go into the ecosystem, and let's add plants, and you can select just any tree that you want. And in the density, we'll right click edit function, and we'll add an image, and we'll just add our park image. And remember, we need to inverse it. Then we'll need to go here and reduce our scaling right there a little bit, and we'll populate it. And if we preview it, we actually have a very nice lot of trees going around, but the problem is, remember, we created that map before, so it wouldn't populate all over the place. So we'll use our trees image that we created before. And now you see how that works? Inverse it. And here they are all very nicely all along that edge there with that nice middle part. And you know what? This is jumping a little too much for me, so we'll go this way, and there you go. So you can now see our park with the trees and this open area where people can walk. We could bring in a bump map to add some hills if we wanted, but for this tutorial, we'll just leave it like this so we can have a faster render. It's already looking pretty good though, but I think we can do some more. Actually, you know what? Let's go to our materials right here. And we can go to this ecosystem called default, and these are our buildings. Double time click it to open it, and let's create our building material. So let's select the default and change this one to glass. Just a standard glass. And we'll add an additional layer, and we'll just add a normal additional layer to this. Oops, wrong one. right there. So now we have it, and sometimes what happens when you're selecting or adding a layer, it will just close itself. So just open it up again. That's just a quirk. So we'll go to colors, edit, modify the color, and let's set this to maybe some high-tech grayish blue color. Let's go to edit function. We'll leave this one, and this, what we need to do is go to transparency, and we'll add a function. Go here and select square patterns. Also, let's go right here and add a filter. Edit the filter, and here we'll just add 1 point here and another point and move it straight up. So what I want here is just some small lines, or if you want, you can manage to make the lines a little thicker so you can kind of play around to get the look that you want. But I don't want this. I want it more defined. So increase the alpha boost. So you see we have these great building windows. So we'll go into highlights and we'll increase the highlights on this, make it more shiny and metallic. And we can add some reflections to that as well. On this material, you can work as much as you want on it or apply your own materials. I just want to do this for the buildings. Let's go to Object Standard and maybe reduce the scale so it fits better with our buildings. Now, if we preview it, we already have a very nice looking city with this park in the middle and these buildings all crowded up against each other, kind of futuristic because we don't see any old ones. And let's take our camera now and let's move it a little bit lower. Right in here, and just where it's pointing. Make it so the park is a little visible. You know what? The streets are empty, and we need to put something in there on the streets. But in a future city, there's going to be robots who live around there. So we'll go back here and add an additional ecosystem. Actually, we don't need this one. We need the ecosystem. So in the ecosystem, add an object, and actually I have right here my robot from the robot pack. So we'll select this guy and go to density, variable density, edit function, add an additional image. So you already can do this now with your eyes closed. Invert this for the population. Okay, let's go now here and avoid overlapping instances and increase the density a little bit. And we're populating it with a lot of robots on the street. And at this point, we might want to reduce the size of our robots so they won't be so big, so they fit the scale. So they're having their own robot parade here down the street. So okay, let's go bring in an atmosphere, and we'll be using something like high altitude. So we have some nice coloring as well. And we'll go to our ground, change it to something like this, Winnipeg. And let's preview what we have now. Okay, so we see these tons of robots walking around and these interesting buildings on the streets, but there are a couple things that I don't quite like, so let's go back and change them. This is part of that problem that you always are going to want to tweak it. You could work on it forever. We'll just decrease the number of robots here, so we won't have a massive, insane amount, but there will still be quite a few of them. And we can also force some alignment, so they'll be going in rows down here on their parade. Now, another thing that I don't like is our material, actually. So let's check this building material. And let's do a couple of things right here. We'll reduce the highlight, edit, and change the color to be even darker so we can distinguish between the glass and metal structure more easily. And that will look a little bit darker. And let's look at another atmosphere that we can load, so it'll look more interesting. Heavy summer, I think. Okay, let's drop this main camera a bit lower and let's move it maybe slightly. And there you go. And with the composition, you could spend hours and hours playing around and figuring out the best way to create it, the best way to look at it. Let's go to lights. Make it a little more ambient and a little brighter. And I think that will do. So let's go to our final image. You can see that we have these city blocks here with our robot parade going back and forth with a city park here. And actually we could increase the size of these trees, but that's okay for now. And what is nice is that we did this with only one terrain and the layered material that we applied to this. And this kind of thing works well when you have a huge big terrain and any kind that you might like to fly over and you want to create a lot of detail over a large area fast. You can see that this didn't really take us very long at all. But you can also see that the more time you spend on the details, the higher quality you'll get. Thank you for watching this tutorial from Geekatplay Studio. If you have more questions or you want to find more tutorials and to join us in the forums, please visit us at www.geekatplay.com or vututorials.com.